Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. We often hear and see stories about family dairy farms and how those farms are passed on from generation to generation. For a variety of reasons, family farm succession doesn't always happen. Sometimes the land is used for housing or other development. And sometimes when the land does stay on farming, it's no longer used for dairy. The next generation may transition to other kinds of livestock or other types of farming. For our first segment today, Keith Silver reports from the Northeast Kingdom on a new farm on old family land.
The view from the top of the hill at Lavender Essentials of Vermont is breathtaking. Second only to the scenery is the story behind how this one-of-a-kind business got started.
In the words of Sun Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, we backed ourselves against a mountain of dry trees and leaves and sticks, and we lit it on fire.
After separate and successful careers, Michelle Judd and Pierre Capron met and fell in love. In 2017, they quit their jobs, cashed in their 401ks, and sold a house to start a lavender farm on Judd's family land in Derby.
I've probably always been a risk taker. That's kind of a family value instilled in me by my parents. I'm a firm believer in if your dreams don't scare you, they're probably not big enough.
It was a bit of a risk. It remains a bit of a risk. There's no question. We've learned a lot about growing lavender. In fact, our first year was not very, it was not very, we were not very successful our first year. We lost up to 70% in our first wintering.
Lavender is one of the top 5 most profitable crops to grow, according to Modern Farmer, a resource for food producers and consumers. 1 acre of lavender can fetch about $125,000 in retail sales from dried bouquets alone. Value-added products like soaps, oils, and lotions increase that value. The USDA recommends growing lavender in a hardiness zone of 5 or higher. The farm here in Derby falls below that threshold. The key is getting the lavender established.
We know that there was a farm that was north of us that was quite successful. It can be done. Once you get it established, there's no pests or bugs or diseases that really affect it. It's a very hardy plant. Getting it established and getting it to winter are the biggest hurdles. It worked out to be a nice niche product or crop, which is important to the diversity of the agriculture in the state of Vermont.
Growing lavender is what sparked this couple to start farming, and they want visitors to share in their dream.
One of the biggest goals that I have personally is to give people something to do. Having grown up in Derby most of my life, lived there most of my life, the common question that people ask is, what is there to do? We want to create a destination that you can come to for a very small amount of money and find something to do. And if you drove 10 minutes to get here or 2 hours to get here, hopefully in our mind, you'll never forget. So here on the farm, we invite people to come, take some time, enjoy the view, get outside. We want people to slow down, kind of disconnect from technology and connect with each other.
Life is busy. It's very difficult to unwind. But when you get here, the raw nature, the slight breeze, hear the birds chirping, and the sun in your face, it's decompressing.
What Capron and Judd offer is called agritourism. Come for the lavender, stay for the experience.
It's really important to diversify your economic base in any community, not only a rural community, in order to keep the community vibrant and alive.
Jane Kolodinsky is the chair of UVM's Community Development and Applied Economics. She believes diversified agriculture and agritourism strengthen Vermont communities and local economies.
So these specialty types of agriculture, diversified agriculture, are really important, and I think it's an exciting time to reinvigorate agriculture and to look at it in a little bit of a different way, because Vermont is not the commodity state. We don't have huge swaths of wheat farms, and we don't even have huge swaths of dairy farms. It's small, it's scrappy, and you've got to be able to make a go for it. So you've got to have that passion, you've got to run the numbers, but it seems to me to be a way to keep the fabric and the history of Vermont that can strengthen other economic opportunities and keep our tourism base strong as well.
Essential for the owners of this farm at the top of Vermont is for visitors to make memories, to stop and smell the flowers.
Hopefully what you get out of this is something so much more than our 10-acre field of plants and crops. You get a feeling of home. Often they come here and they're very wound up when they come, and they're like, what do we do? What do we do? What is there to do? And we say, this is not an amusement park. This is a peaceful place for you and your family. And that same person comes to me in an hour down at the little retail shop to purchase some lavender products, and they're like, wow, this reminded me of my gram, and my grandfather did this, or when I was a child. And then suddenly they're reminiscing about where they used to live, or maybe where they want to live, or where they went on vacation. So it becomes kind of a progression of feelings when people come here, and that's kind of cool to have created that for people.
For a farm built on a dream, the reality of Lavender Essentials of Vermont offers the opportunity to slow down, take in the sights, and celebrate the uniqueness of Vermont agriculture. In Derby, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
For more information about Lavender Essentials of Vermont, including directions and frequently asked questions about lavender, check the website we've listed on your screen. The Center for Disease Control estimates that 48 million Americans are sickened each year by a foodborne illness. Under the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce farms of all sizes face regulatory oversight. In turn, UVM Extension and the Vermont Agency of Agriculture and other organizations are helping farmers with innovative solutions to improve food safety and farm viability. Across the Fence visited a farm in Moncton that's a case in point.
New Leaf Organics in Moncton is typical of a Vermont hill farm.
There's not much flat ground. It's all super hilly and really hard to access.
The old dairy barn at the bottom of the hill is part of an agricultural past that owner Jill Capel sees as the centerpiece of her farm's future.
The health of the barn was really important to me because it's one of our biggest assets on this property.
Capel grows certified organic vegetables, small fruits, and cut flowers on 5 acres. She sells her produce through farmers markets, co-ops, and an on-farm CSA. The flowers are used for wedding and event planning. For years, she had used a porch alongside the barn or on the top floor for washing and packing. This setup was more about making do and never intended to be permanent.
We kind of reached that point where we were just ready for an upgrade as far as our wash pack went. I just was kind of done using what we had had for a long time, and we had this unused space down below our barn, and I was visiting another farm and saw what they had been working on at their place, and I was getting all excited about what the potential was here. So rather than me having to learn all of that stuff, I knew what I wanted the result to be, but I didn't want to spend a ton of time thinking about the logistics and the mechanics of it all. I wanted to just have somebody who knew what they were doing come look at my space, help me figure out the flow and what might work the best.
Enter University of Vermont Extension.
So it looks a lot different than it did last winter.
Andy Chamberlain works as a technician for Extension's agricultural engineering. This barn renovation is one of his recent projects.
My first reaction when walking into the space was like, yeah, it's an old dairy barn like you'd expect to see on many farms. You know, it's dirty with flaky paint and cobwebs and things like that. So it's definitely come a long ways, and you have to put on the right glasses in order to say, okay, I see this existing space now. How do I clean it up and make it really usable for today's needs?
There was nothing unsafe or unsanitary about how Capel was washing and storing crops before the renovation. But it wasn't ideal either.
I'd say it's pretty typical, yeah, and there's not anything wrong with it as long as you keep your tubs clean and it's organized and your crew doesn't mind working outside. What can be wrong with it is that you're working on uneven surfaces, and oftentimes you're standing in wet locations because you're hosing things off, so you're tracking mud around while you're trying to keep both your tubs and your vegetables clean.
Capel's old wash pack facility was also bumping up against the guidelines set by the FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. The law sets standards for food safety that aim to prevent foodborne illness rather than reacting after an outbreak occurs.
So it's part of being what I would call a sustainable farm now.
Hans Estrin is the produce safety specialist with UVM Extension. He coordinates CAPS, short for Community Accreditation for Produce Safety. It's a voluntary program offered by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association in collaboration with Extension. CAPS helps small and medium-scale farmers adopt best practices that comply with FSMA.
So the Community Accreditation for Produce Safety, this whole concept came out of this practical approach to produce safety. Growers come to a situation, they have a market, they are running their farm, and our premise is that they're in the best position to put on risk management glasses, look at their operation, see where there are red flags, and figure out a way to reduce them. We align those with FSMA, the standards of FSMA. They are just lined right up in the categories and the standards.
Working with educators and peers to be in compliance with state and federal regulations is one thing. Paying to upgrade a facility is another. The cost of Capel's project was $90,000. To help offset that amount, she received a $5,000 Vermont Produce Safety Improvement Grant from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets.
The Vermont Produce Safety Improvement Grant Program was designed to help produce growers make on-farm produce safety improvements and to help them transition to compliance with the produce safety rule or meet market demands for food safety. So it's kind of all those facets together is what kind of brought that program to its start. And to date, we've had 3 rounds of funding and have funded 29 Vermont farms. So we hope to keep it going.
Capel and her crew have been working in this space for a few months. Even in that short time, she's already seeing more potential for this new old space.
It's just made such an improvement as far as our work setup goes and just the comfort level and just having space where we're not on top of each other or, multiple people can work in the same zone at the same time. Everything's movable, nothing's fixed to the wall except for the sink so that we can grow and shrink. I can see the potential for us to just keep tweaking and seeing what works for us and what doesn't.
This project at New Leaf Organics shows what can happen when educators, state officials, and farmers work together. Typical for a hill farm or any farm in Vermont. In Moncton, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
And that's our program today. Once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.